Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on how you can expand your ServiceNow platform into facilities. My name is Nora Rinnen, and I will be your moderator today. I work on the marketing team here at the Fujitsu ServiceNow practice, and I'm excited to be introducing you to this session today. In this webinar, we will show you how you can leverage your existing ServiceNow investment to modernize facilities service management. Today's speakers will be Peter Goltz from Nuvolo and our own Jan-Hugo Lundberg from the Fujitsu ServiceNow practice. Before I hand the word over to Jan-Hugo, I have a few practicalities I would like to cover. The webinar is scheduled to last for about 1 hour with a 10 minutes Q&A session in the end. You will all be muted throughout the webinar to avoid any interruptions. If you want to ask questions, please submit these by using the section called Questions in the menu on your right side of the screen. We will do as many questions as possible within the time frame in the end. If your question is not answered, we will contact you with the answer after the webinar has ended. Within the next days, you will receive an email with the slides and a recording of this presentation. Please enjoy the session as I hand the word over to you, Jan-Hugo, who will kick things off.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Jan-Hugo Lundberg, and I'm the product line lead for Nuvolo in Fujitsu ServiceNow practice. And welcome to this webinar, which we are doing, as Nora said, together with Nuvolo. And I hope we will give you an insight into what Nuvolo can do on your ServiceNow platform. First of all, I wanted to start with a few key numbers about our practice. The Fujitsu ServiceNow practice has been a ServiceNow implementer for many years now, 9 years. We have implemented different areas, IT, SM, field service, and HR with the ServiceNow platform. You can see some key numbers about, like, we have supported over 8,000 service desk agents, 2,700 managed service desk customers in these solutions, and 30 million end user contracts. We have delivered over 800 ServiceNow projects across Europe. And now with the acquisition of Symphony, which is the company where I also come from, we have now doubled the capacity of implementing ServiceNow. The reason for mentioning this to you is that it is an important knowledge to implement Nuvolo, because Nuvolo, as we will see in a moment, is running on the ServiceNow platform and uses exactly the same capabilities as ServiceNow uses to run. So if you go one more slide, please. I also wanted to mention that worldwide, we have quite many ServiceNow experts worldwide, 400 plus, which are doing implementations of the ServiceNow platform. And we have also recently done trainings for all our consultants on Nuvolo as well. Because Nuvolo, even though Nuvolo is running on the ServiceNow platform, it has some specific functionality in the areas which you will see very soon, which Peter will show you very soon. So what I will do is to hand over the word to Peter Goltz from Nuvolo, which have the deepest insights into this solution, and he will give you an overview. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Jan. So my name is Peter Goltz. I'm the Director of Solution Consulting for our European operations. And today's demonstration will show you how you can extend your ServiceNow platform into facilities. Many of Nuvolo's customers were using ServiceNow for either ITSM, HR, ITOM, and identified a need to be able to consolidate applications onto one platform. So today I'll be introducing Nuvolo, and then we'll go into the application. I'll show you some of the different use cases that we can utilize in a Nuvolo application to introduce efficiencies. So first, just to give you an idea of Nuvolo's relationship with ServiceNow. That relationship is on 3 fronts. First, they're a strategic investor. So we work very closely with ServiceNow to be able to, one, identify and identify potential prospects who have a need for facilities were also built on the platform. So, I'll go into this in just a moment here, but being built on the platform means that we do all of our development on the platform, and our application can be installed within your current instance. And then also ServiceNow is a customer of Nuvolo. As you may know, ServiceNow once had a facilities application. Nuvolo has now developed the application to the point where ServiceNow is using our space and move capabilities. Just to give you an example of what that use case means is ServiceNow has global offices where they have a lot of remote employees that perhaps may need a desk for the day. And also they have employees that are going to the office every single day and have an office that's dedicated to them. With Nuvolo's functionality, they have the ability to be able to drag and drop their employees to that desk, which gives them better visibility into things like utilization and occupancy across each of their corporate locations. Being built on the platform allows us to inherit some of the core functionality of ServiceNow. I mentioned how the application can be installed on your current instance. What that means is that you have one platform to manage all of your different business units. You'll see here we inherit things like the configurability and flexibility of the platform. You can also use the same reporting tool to build out all of the reports that may be relevant to a facilities team. And Nuvolo is what's considered a scoped application. So our application can exist within the instance without necessarily impacting any of the other applications that may be installed. And of course, ServiceNow is known as being the world's most innovative technology company, and they have a very secure and compliant cloud platform, and also very, very scalable. So as you grow as an organization, or as you begin to bring more business units onto the platform, the ServiceNow cloud allows you the flexibility to do that. When we think about Nuvolo's core functionality as an application, here you'll see 5 different modules. One of those being maintenance and asset management. So you may be familiar with how you can manage all of your IT equipment with the ServiceNow application. With Nuvolo, you can manage all of your operating equipment, your facilities equipment like air conditioning units, HVACs. You can also utilize our mobile application to complete and close out all of those work orders, whether it's doing scheduled maintenance, tracking inventory, and then also utilizing the core ServiceNow reporting engine to track and manage the efficiencies of the facilities department. We also have the ability for space and move. This is a very key component of the Nuvolo solution. And as I mentioned, ServiceNow is a customer utilizing this functionality. What we do is we allow you to be able to pull your floor plans into the application, which then allows you to operationalize. So you can do things like conference room scheduling, room booking, employee moves, whether that's single or enterprise moves, and then also have a better idea of things like utilization to identify any type of trends within the organization. Capital program and project management allows you to track all of the construction projects and have better visibility into things like budgets and schedules and any permits that are associated to that. Real estate and lease allows you to track all of your leases, operationalize those leases to really get an idea of how that all fits into things like the space and move, so the individuals located at that location, and then also track the financials associated to it. A lot of organizations have leases where they're leasing out hundreds or thousands of buildings, and they need the ability to track all of the information associated to those. And then also sustainability and energy management, where you can pull in your energy consumption and energy cost and correlate those to the buildings that are utilized that, and then also the departments and business units as well. As Nora mentioned, as we go throughout the presentation, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat window. And at the end of the demonstration, which we're going to transition into now, we'll go ahead to cover those. So we'll try to leave 10 or so minutes to answer any questions at the end of the presentation. So now transitioning into the application itself, we'll go through a few different use cases and ways you can utilize the Nuvolo application. What we'll look at first is ways that an end user can interact with the application. Typically, those that are using ServiceNow today have some sort of self-service portal where an end user can go to make a request for IT equipment or submit some sort of IT incident. Within that same portal, Nuvolo can exist where you can enhance that end user experience. Perhaps an individual has a facilities request, maybe something's broken, room's too hot, room's too cold, or even something like conference room booking. They can utilize that same portal to make those requests. You can see I'm a logged in user, which gives me the ability to track things like the status of work orders that I've submitted. When we think about different types of facilities requests, here you can see an example of some of those, whether it's the ability to submit a work order against a repair or installation. Maybe the room's too hot or too cold, or maybe needs some sort of janitorial service or carpet cleaning. Of course, with the flexibility of the platform, it allows you to very easily configure different types of the words, the images on the screen. But here's as an example, right? Maybe we're submitting a work order request against a repair or installation. You can see things like submitting against the asset or perhaps the location. We also think about ways to help reduce duplication. So here within the right-hand panel, we can see any active work orders, which allow an end user to identify if someone else had submitted a work order against this issue to help reduce some of those inbound calls. Once we've defined the issue, we can go ahead to submit the request. Another example of submitting a facilities work order utilizes the concept of your floor plans. So here, what you'll see is the ability to access the floor plans by simply identifying the location, and at that point, being able to submit a work order based on that location. You can see on the floor plan, you can see any open requests, and then also as an end user, I can simply select the space of where I'm located and then submit my requests. Let's say, for example, room's too hot. At that point, as these requests are being submitted, they can be routed to the facilities technicians in many different ways. One of those ways is the concept of automatic routing. So utilizing the criteria of the request to make sure that it gets to the right person, whether it's based on the skills required or the location. And then also going into some sort of dispatch where an individual or a group can further assign that out to the correct individual. So that's just an example of how you can utilize the self-service portal to capture facilities requests. End users can also make inbound calls for facilities types requests as well, utilizing the Nuvolo call center. If you're familiar with the ServiceNow platform, you'll be happy to see that as I said, our application is built on the platform. So all of this will look very, very similar to you. As an inbound call is being made, the dispatcher can capture all of the information, capture things like the priority, see any historical information, whether it's the past calls from this individual or the equipment associated to them. And then also, once that is captured, they can utilize many different options to then make sure it gets to the right individual, whether it's just simply typing in the person's name to assign the work order to them. Perhaps it's assigning by location. So as a technician is out in the field, assigning the work to the nearest technician to that work location. And then also the concept of automatic routing, where once we submit this request based on the criteria, it would get to the right individual. Also, if you're familiar with the ServiceNow platform, when we talk about configurability, it's very easy and simple to make updates to the forms. So as a customer, you get to decide who has the permissions, the level of permissions to be able to make changes to these forms. But as for an example, if you wanted to make a change and had the right permission, what you can do is see any active fields that are being reported against, any historical fields, and then also simply create your own field or new field, which you can then track and report against. So that's just a quick insight into the flexibility of the platform, but often very, very beneficial to a facilities department. When you think of some of the applications that a typical facilities team is using, typically they're outdated technology. Maybe they were built 10, 15 years ago. With this flexibility, facilities teams can very quickly accelerate their rate of business by simply tailoring the solution to match their own business process. Typically, also facilities teams are managing all of their equipment. So here they can manage their equipment and track things like the make, model, manufacturer of that equipment. Also utilizing floor plans to identify the location of that device, where very quickly they can see not only on what floor or what location, but also specifically the room of where that device is located. This is very helpful for things like fire extinguisher inspections, where typically an organization will need an inspector to come in on, let's say, a quarterly basis to inspect or audit all of the fire extinguishers. Here, by simply adjusting the filter, you can then see all of the equipment that's on that floor plan. When we think about also managing equipment, tracking standard information like make, model, tracking the financials associated to that. So there's really two different types of financials, whether it's more stagnant costs like cost, list price, book value, or what you can think of as accumulative costs. So as the technicians out in the field with the mobile application, adding their itemized costs, whether that be labor, parts, materials, capturing that information to then make repair versus replace decisions. And then also tracking historical work orders to know service history. Also understanding upcoming schedule maintenance. So as I mentioned with the Nuvolo application, you can track and manage all of your schedule maintenance and base that off of many different types of criteria. And then also associating things like knowledge articles to this device. So at any point when a work order is generated, making sure that the manual associated to it is automatically associated to the work order. And then also inventory tracking, parts tracking, making sure that one, you know where these parts have been added to, and then also being able to track and manage the work order that was actually associated with. So that's just a quick insight into some of how some of our customers are managing their facilities equipment. At this point, let's go ahead to transition to the mobile application to show you what it looks like to complete and close out a work order with the mobile application. What you'll see here is the Nuvolo mobile application is a native application, so simply an icon on a tablet, whether it's an iOS device, an Android device. When we then go to access the mobile application, you'll see we were presented here with a facilities dashboard. And typically each technician will have their own dashboard, which will contain their things like their work orders, the equipment that they're responsible for, and then any reports that may be relevant. Our mobile application has both online and offline functionality. So in the scenario that they're working perhaps on the roof of a building or perhaps in the basement, they can still access and close out their work orders while being completely offline. And then at the point of when they get back online, they can then access or send off any work orders that were completed. As we go to look at the work orders that we have, we can utilize the idea of barcode scanning. So just very quickly, I'll present you and show you what it looks like to barcode scan. And then also the ability to simply search or filter based on many different criteria, whether it's the status or the priority. As we go to access one of the work orders, what they're presented with first is all of the information that was provided when this request was first made. And as we developed the mobile application, we made it to make it very, very easy for a technician to interact with. So we focused on the experience, and as I process through this work order, I'll be going from left to right in these tabs that we see above. We'll also notice is an easy way to track the amount of time it took to process through this work order. That time is typically being used for things like billbacks, or perhaps you have an external vendor coming in on site to fix the elevator and actually managing the invoicing associated to that. So as we begin to process through this work order, we can be presented with the idea or concept of checklists. These are different steps and procedures that need to be followed every single time that these types of requests are being made. These checklists are completely configurable and can align with your business process. And also they can be unique to different scenarios, whether it's the type of asset or the type of work order. I mentioned the ability to track and manage the costs associated to labor. You can also track and manage all the parts associated to this work order. So as a new part is added to the work order, it's added as an itemized cost. And then the cost associated to that can be rolled up into an invoice and also give you better visibility in the lifetime cost of servicing this device. With the application, you can also capture further documentation, whether it's capturing a picture to close out this work order. Let's take a picture of my computer here. Also have the ability to do things like signature or upload documents, and then also track upcoming work orders, whether it's historical work orders or maybe even upcoming scheduled maintenance. And just to show you very quickly, the idea of capturing a signature, typically this is being used if an external vendor is coming on site, making sure that the store manager or the office manager is capturing the signature to then designate that it was closed and complete. So that's very quickly at a high level, the Nuvolo mobile application. Let's now go ahead and start thinking about some of the reports that the Nuvolo functionality allows you to capture. Here, tracking things like open, closed, pending work orders, understanding the status of those work orders on a given basis, or how they're allocating their time. What we also want to give you insight into is things like productivity, to understand how these technicians are utilizing their time and how many work orders are closing out on a daily basis, and then identifying any type of outstanding work orders. So here we see a work order aging report to see those work orders that are outstanding, who they're assigned to, the status, and then also the ability to bulk edit. So let's say, for example, we simply wanted to close out a number of work orders. You can see here, you can have the ability to do that. From a financial standpoint, being able to track the costs associated to facilities department. Here you see contracts, the return on investment, and then also the dates associated to that, whether it's a start, end date, or renewal date. And then also repair versus replace or life cycle management, where here you can see all of the devices, the number of devices that are coming as expired at a certain period in time, and then also the costs associated to replacing those devices. So this typically gives the facilities department the insight to better budget for their upcoming expenditures. As I'm sure we have a wide range of audience on today's call, whether you're part of a facilities department or maybe even part of the IT department, these are use cases that are very, very common in a facilities environment, making sure that you have the insight to be able to track and better automate all of the requests that are coming in, and also tracking and managing the equipment that's dedicated to the facilities team. So now transitioning into another portion of the Nuvolo application falls in line because typically a facilities department, they have their own internal technicians. They have technicians that when they get assigned work, they go out to then fix those issues. However, oftentimes, whether it's a corporate environment or perhaps even retail, convenience stores, or even energy or oil companies, they also have the concept of assigning work out to external vendors. One of the biggest challenges with that today is the idea of accountability. So, in today's environment, maybe an organization's using an outdated application or perhaps Excel, maybe even assigning work orders out to vendors through email. Utilizing the mobile application allows you to better enforce that accountability. So actually understanding things like, are these vendors aligning with the service level agreements that were first assigned? Also tracking the performance of those vendors and the cost of doing business with them. What I'll very quickly show you is the idea of how you can get better accountability to those vendors by tracking things like SLAs that are achieved, breach SLAs, and then also thinking about the performance, whether it's requests to completion. So how long does it take for this vendor to actually close out these work orders? And then also the costs associated to doing business with them, whether it's the spend on parts or spend on labor. And then also the contracts. So understanding contracts associated with them and then all the invoices that they're submitting. So where we'll look at next is the idea of a vendor portal. And this allows you really to get that transparency that many facilities departments want with their customers. Here what we see is the vendor portal. And in this scenario, I would be an external company logging into this portal to then access the work orders that are assigned to me. This then gives the facilities department the insight into, was this request received? At what point was it submitted and completed? So you can see here within this portal, it's a simple URL, I can see work orders assigned to my organization. I can see things like the priority of those work orders. And I can also open up a work order, add the itemized costs, and manage the full invoicing process. So this typically allows, let's say, and for an example, one of our customers, 7-Eleven, to get better insight into the cost of doing business with their vendors. So here, as an external vendor receives that work order, capturing the information, the costs associated to the work order, and here you can see, just as an example, some of those cost items. Here would be a purchase order for a specific part and the cost associated to that part, to then give the business unit insight into that transaction. So just to quickly summarize, we've taken a look at how requests can be made, whether it's through the portal, the call center, how a facilities department can track their more operating devices, operating equipment, tracking and managing closing out a work order on the mobile application, whether it's online or offline, capturing checklists or any further documentation, and then also the different reports that you can use within the facilities department and managing your vendors as well. At this point, we'll transition over to the concept of managing space. So I mentioned the different use cases of conference room scheduling or perhaps managing large-scale moves. We'll look at that, and then we'll transition over to answering any questions that you may have. So within our plan move application or space and move application, you can manage both large-scale and single-user moves. From the portal, an end user can also make a request for a move, whether it's going from one office to the next, or we've even seen the use case of managing any type of residential or flats that they may be leasing out to their employees. Within this, first we can define all of the details associated to that move, when it needs to happen, the priority, and then also any approvers that need to be in place. At that point, we can then launch the scenario planning tool. And this then gives you the ability to manage many different types of scenarios to understand which is going to maximize the use of your space before you actually then commit that as a plan going forward. When we then open up a scenario, you can see on the right-hand side, we have access to all of the Active Directory. So if you currently have your Active Directory within your application, we can simply utilize that with also the ServiceNow modules. And this also is a very close tie-in with something like ServiceNow's HR module, where you think about the onboarding and offboarding process. Nuvolo's space and move functionality can really allow you to have that better together story, where as an employee is being onboarded, they're going to need things like IT equipment, the computer, make sure that their network is working correctly. That's typically managed directly within ServiceNow. But oftentimes that employee being onboarded also needs a desk, a chair, an office space. With the Nuvolo functionality, you can then assign them their space and view on your floor plans what space is available, what space is currently occupied. So as an example, here we can see where individuals are currently located. We can also see all of our employees and assign them to a space. What we can also do is search our floor plans to get an understanding of the criteria of the space that we're looking for. So as we then go to search our floor plan, we can look for, let's say for an example, we're looking for an office. As I then go to filter the floor plan to show me the spaces that match that criteria, you can see it highlights the spaces. At that point, I can then simply drag and drop the employees to their new location. As I'm dragging and dropping these employees to their new location, it's doing two things. It's tracking where they're coming from and then also where they're going to. This then will update the reports to give you an idea of occupancy planning, space planning. And you can see here if they had a previous location, where they're coming from, and then also where they're going to, so the location that they were assigned. You can also get more detailed and get an idea of when you want that move date to happen, the cost associated to this move. And then also specifically for conference room scheduling, as an end user, they can make requests for a desk for the day or perhaps for a conference room where they can select what type of space they're looking for, maybe the number of individuals that are going to be added to this meeting, and then they'll be presented with the office rooms or the conference rooms that meet that criteria. So those are just a few different use cases for the space and move functionality. At the point of the move being then committed, right? So we've made the moves we wanted to. At that point, we can then go ahead to submit that for approval if you have some approval workflow that you need in place. Once it's been submitted, it'll then generate a move work order. That move work order then gives you the ability to simply assign out that move to one of the facilities technicians. Maybe they need to move their equipment or that individual's desk from their previous location to their new location. All of this then gives you better visibility into the current, the real-time look into your space, whether that's pending moves, pending approval, in progress. Also tracking your space usage, whether it's occupied or vacant, understanding by location. And then also things like building stack to give you an understanding of which departments are located within each building, to give you an idea of how you can better move one department to another and utilize that space. And then also the concept of managing occupancy levels. So what we're looking at here is current space that's being occupied. Perhaps it's broken down by region or the type of space. And then also the individuals that are assigned to each location. So you can say things like, we have 31 individuals assigned to this building or this floor. One of the areas we discussed earlier was the idea of managing your real estate properties within the application. What we'll see here is the way that you can operationalize your leases to understand things like individuals assigned to that space. Here within this lease, you can track all of your details like the location, the terms and conditions, and also any dates associated to that. The financial portion allows you to get an idea of the different components of your lease, whether that's the base rent, insurance, or maintenance. And these things can also then be charged back to certain employees or individuals based on the way that you tailor that business process. Also having an idea of contracts that are in place or individuals assigned to that space. Understanding the different cost components. So we can also integrate with any type of financial system that you may be using to then automate the payment of those leases. And then also giving the employees that are assigned to that space any idea of upcoming activities. Perhaps you're doing maintenance or renovations on a certain floor or parking lot, or maybe even work orders that are requested from each location. This then gives you the transparency and visibility across your building portfolio to understand the most expensive spaces, how you're utilizing that space, and then also getting a better idea of utilizing some of your more cost-efficient spaces as well. Now thinking about the idea of managing your capital programs. So typically a facilities department is doing a lot of repair versus replace, break fix type of work, but also some facilities departments have an idea of a construction team or a team that's doing any type of large scale renovations. With the Nuvolo application, they can manage those renovations with insight into things like the budgets or allocated budgets that have been put towards this project. Here you can see in this project tracking things like the individuals that are a part of it, the schedules of when it starts and when it's supposed to end, and then also the financials. I've had a lot of conversations with organizations with a construction component, and what they want to do is get better visibility into the milestones of the status of those milestones when they're completed, and then also being able to easily assign them out to both internal and external organizations to be able to complete those milestones. Also getting a better idea of the financial component. So you can see this idea of managing budgets. This allows you to establish a budget, the planned amount, and as you have your expenses or your itemized expenses, you can then associate them back to this budget. So you can have real-time insight into, what is the remaining amount in this budget, and any type of remaining amount you then can reallocate to different projects. Another area that's typically very useful is the idea of managing these different tasks in a Gantt chart. So seeing how each of these different steps that need to be followed fall in line with one another. Let's say, for example, it's as simple as painting the inside of a building. Typically, first you're going to want to prime all of the walls, and then you can do the painting. With these idea of the relationship between the tasks, you can set that up so that an individual or a group will be notified when the previous step is completed, and then they can then begin their task that's at hand. But you can see here we have all of the different things that need to be completed, the start and end dates, and then we can also edit those and view any types of details, whether it's seeing things like, when is this supposed to start, or adding any financial or cost associated to this. I was talking about the idea of dependencies, and here you can see as an example, tracking things like finish to start or start to finish. These are going to be the relationships to these tasks in the scenario that something needs to be completed before another task then begins. Very useful in a large-scale construction project where you have many different groups that all need to be collaborating together to make sure that these greater projects are completed on time, and also that you can identify any types or areas for efficiency. One of the areas that I discussed earlier on in the presentation is the idea of managing sustainability. So waste management and energy consumption. What we're going to see here is the idea to manage all of those energy bills, energy consumption, and typically organizations want to understand the buildings or the business units that are occupying this energy to do things like chargebacks. When we're looking at this, you can see things like tracking overdue bills to have visibility on when those are due, when they need to be paid. Tracking on a calendar, the date that those bills were incurred, and also the costs associated, whether it's to the type of energy, electricity, gas, water, or even the types of consumption. So here you can see the different volumes or metrics associated to the consumption of things like electricity, gas, vehicle, to identify any trends. I know myself in the winter, typically you need more heat in order to combat the cold. Typically that would make sense to see the heating bill increase. But in the scenario that it's in the summer and you have the heating bill increasing, there may be some type of underlying issue with the components that are there to manage that. And then the idea of scheduled maintenance. So to kind of all pull this together, scheduled maintenance allows an organization to automate the creation of specific types of tasks that need to be completed, whether it's associated to a space or to an equipment itself. I'll quickly walk you through the different steps and procedures to set up a scheduled maintenance, and then we can take time to answer any questions that you may have. So thinking about setting up a scheduled maintenance plan and thinking about how organizations historically do this, oftentimes they're using an application to do this or they're doing it in Excel. However, the largest challenge that they have is having visibility into the tasks or work orders that are upcoming. So understanding when you have 400 different assets, understanding which scheduled maintenance plan are they a part of, when are those due, and then also what is the cost associated to those scheduled maintenance plans to understand things like service history and the lifetime cost of servicing that device. As we walk through setting up this plan, first you can define which type of equipment or which type of spaces you want to associate this to. One of our customers is a large sporting arena where they manage large-scale events, whether it's concerts or even sports games. With their application, they're automating the different types of janitorial services they need to do before the event for things like bathrooms or hallways. They're also using the application to automate their scheduled maintenance for some of their more IoT devices that are internet-connected air conditioning units. So utilizing the concept of utilization. So once that device has run for maybe 20 hours, 30 hours, 40 hours, generating a scheduled maintenance against that based on that utilization. Some of the other ways that utilization can be generated or scheduled maintenance can be generated is through things like calendars, so dates on a calendar, or floating, where you can say you want something like a quarterly to occur on a reoccurring basis. You can determine when you want that to begin, how many days in advance you want a technician to be notified, and then also the concept of estimated effort. I mentioned one of the largest challenges today is for organizations to understand that the different types of scheduled or preventative maintenance that they have upcoming. With estimated effort, it gives them the visibility to be able to understand the resources that they need on hand, and also to make sure they're tracking towards completing those within the expected due date. So let's say, for example, we want the start date to begin today, and then also, it's an estimated 4 hours. At the point of then creating the scheduled maintenance, it'll then pull together all of the equipment that matches the criteria that we've defined. And these are going to be simply built by the dropdown saying, type of asset, the make, the model, the manufacturer. And then at the point of then submitting it, work orders or scheduled maintenance will then be automatically generated for the assets that meet the criteria on the dates that are defined here. With the floating, it can also take into account the last time it was performed. So maybe the schedule of maintenance is done before it was due, or maybe it was done after it was due. This then allows you to automate the generation to then fall in line with the previous time that it was completed. And you can also do things like get a better idea of the inventory or parts that you need on hand to do the scheduled maintenance. So managing the parts that need to be associated to this plan, understanding the parts that you need, and also comparing that to the parts that are within stock. You can also set up different thresholds. So when a part drops below a certain level, automatically it puts out a purchase requisition to replace that part, to make sure that the stock room always has the equipment, the inventory on hand that's needed for the upcoming maintenance. So those are just a few examples of some of the ways that you can use automation in a modern application to increase efficiencies and save costs within a facilities department. At this point, thinking about the time that we have remaining, let's go ahead to transition to some of the questions that have come in during the presentation. And then hopefully if we can answer any questions that you may have suggested. And if we don't have time to answer all of your questions, we can certainly follow up on a one-off basis.
Thank you, Peter. So we have received a few questions, but just to mention, you can still write in if you have something that you would like to ask. Just write it in under the question section on your right on your screen. The first question is, how can we learn more about the Nuvolo solution?
Yeah, very good question, Jan. I'll refer to you to answer that at first, and then if there's anything else, I can follow up.
Yes, the best way is to contact the ServiceNow salespeople from Fujitsu in your area, which you probably have already contact with, or contact one of us, which is behind this webinar, and then we will arrange a web meeting or a physical meeting with you to tell you more about this.
Yeah, very good point, Jan. And certainly we can also identify some of the different use cases that are going to be most relevant, whether they're coming from the facilities team or you're a part of the facilities team yourself. We can get an understanding of what some of those use cases are, and then follow up with a personalized demonstration to show you how you can do that within the platform that you're already utilizing today.
Great, thank you. The next question, how does the offline app relate to the new offline ServiceNow native capabilities?
Yeah, very good question, actually. So if you're familiar with the ServiceNow mobile application, the new functionality that's coming out is actually part of their newest release, part of Madrid. When Nuvolo first started as an organization, just to give you some of the history, we started off utilizing the core ServiceNow mobile application. What we quickly realized, and based on the feedback from our customers, is that they needed the online offline experience. And that was when we actually started to develop our own mobile application with that online offline experience, and then also prioritize the experience of utilizing the mobile application, making it very easy to use. With the new Madrid release coming out, that's going to be that's going to be really up to the customer, which is going to work best. And that level of flexibility is because we're built on the platform. So you can decide whether you want to utilize the core mobile Nuvolo mobile application or the core ServiceNow mobile application. Different use cases are going to demand different types of applications. So we can certainly, figure out which is going to work best for you. But from our standpoint, we're open to both scenarios, because the Nuvolo functionality can exist within the ServiceNow mobile application.
Thank you, Peter. Then another one here. If we don't have ServiceNow but are still interested in the Nuvolo solution, how do we approach?
Yeah, very good question. So throughout this presentation, we talked quite a bit about ServiceNow, and ServiceNow is being utilized by many organizations for different types of use cases. As you can see here, Nuvolo is more focused on the facilities management, So in the use case that you have yet to deploy ServiceNow, you can buy Nuvolo as a standalone application where you'll have an instance dedicated specifically to Nuvolo. And we do have customers that are just using Nuvolo that aren't ServiceNow. We also have a number of customers that are our ServiceNow customers today, and also utilizing Nuvolo to then consolidate applications. But Jan, perhaps do you want to talk quickly on, if they're interested in ServiceNow platform, what that route would be?
We are. I just wanted to mention or to add that Fujitsu is a partner of Nuvolo, so we will be able to sell. We are a reseller of the licenses, so it is possible to use only Nuvolo. You will get the ServiceNow platform with only capabilities for using Nuvolo. But if you want to move also to IT service management, you need to buy the ServiceNow licenses. But if you use only Nuvolo licenses. Thank you, Peter.
Yeah.
Thank you both. How easy is it to deploy and configure? How do you migrate the data?
Of course. So the migration process is typically very, very simple, right? We want to take your work order history, the equipment that you may have within your existing application, and then also we want to take advantage of any type of workflows that have worked for you in the past. So Fujitsu will then work with you to migrate any type of that information into the new application to make sure that when you turn the application on, it works exactly as you need it to.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you, Jan Hugo. That was all the questions that we had. So this was all we had for you today. We hope that you found the session useful. As already said in the beginning, you will receive an email with link to the presentation as well as the recording. If you want to get in touch with us regarding Nuvolo or facility management, please feel free to contact us. We frequently host webinars related to the ServiceNow platform, so make sure you follow us on LinkedIn to get the updates or visit our website where you can sign up for our newsletter. I will end this webinar by wishing you a great afternoon. Thank you.